Hey, this is Claude. So today what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to talk about BGP confederations and try to break this down with a graphical representation of what a confederation is all about in the BGP world. So this here part one series will pretty much be a lot of drawings. I'll talk about some theory, may touch on route reflectors, the need for those things of that nature. So BGP confederations. So BGP in itself, Border Gateway Protocol. So we know that we have BGP speakers. These speakers may be also known as eBGP for external speakers, and we have iBGP, which are internal speakers. And what we have when you're talking about autonomous systems and you start talking about iBGP networks, you're talking about transient autonomous systems. So these are our ISPs, uh, real big networks, real huge networks, and basically external autonomous systems that may be under the control of company organization XYZ. They'll use these iBGP networks as transient networks. So their traffic will pass through, not necessarily needing any resources within the iBGP environment, but literally to pass through that environment to get to another eBGP autonomous system somewhere else out there in the cyber world. Okay. So when you start thinking about BGP confederations, you are thinking about multiple smaller autonomous systems that are put together into one larger autonomous system, or as some like to call it, taking a super huge autonomous system and breaking it down into smaller subautonomous systems. So I'm gonna try to annotate this on this here picture of what this may actually look like. So let's just say we got these here starships here, all right? And one of them looks like, the Star Trek from the actual Star Trek movie. But in essence, what we got here is, let's say we got these are autonomous systems, okay? And let's just say we take these two autonomous systems here, right? And we give this this will be, let me see if I can do this. AS, we'll just call that 405. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and we'll take this here group of single autonomous systems. All right. And we'll call that autonomous system 708. Okay. And then we got this here one autonomous system that we'll simply call this autonomous system 904. Okay. Now these autonomous systems names are just numbers I'm picking at random, but you get the idea. So you have these here three autonomous systems. And let's just take, for example, autonomous system 708. Okay. And within autonomous system 708, you got, let's just say we got three iBGP speakers. Okay. So we know when we set up our neighborships, we're setting this up with basically what the iBGP thought in mind, where all of these are belonging to the same autonomous system. So in essence, what happens is we have neighborships that go from there to there, okay, and internal neighborships that go from there to there. All right, we can even go, yeah, that's good. We don't have to have multiple pairings, but this is good enough right here. So do you have what's known as this right here? This is a IBGP setup. So we'll just make note IBGP, okay? And that's basically, you got those IBGP routers that are within the same autonomous system, okay? And same thing for autonomous system 405 over here. You got these two starships, okay? That'll be IBGP speakers to one another, and they're set up within the same autonomous system. Now, here's where the BGP Confederation, okay? Well, let me back that up. Let me back that up. So you have these here IBGP speakers within these autonomous systems. Autonomous system 708, you got autonomous system 405, and you got autonomous system 904 that just sits up there by itself. But let's do this. Now we want to take and we want to connect autonomous system 405 with autonomous system 708. So we want to go here with it. Okay. Now that in itself is what you will call an eBGP connection. Okay. So basically what's happening is, to connect autonomous system 708 and autonomous system 405, you actually have to form an eBGP peering. Okay. Different autonomous systems, eBGP. Okay. Routers in different autonomous systems, eBGP. Routers in the same autonomous system, IBGP. Okay. And that would also account for if we wanted to make connections to, let's say from, let me get my stamp right. If we want to make autonomous system connections from 405 up here to 904, okay, and we can also go from 708 to 904 as well, okay. So like I said, so you see how that works. So back to this whole thing of confederations. So what happens when you have a confederation is you have these here three autonomous systems that have their own intertwining connections with each other. Okay. Now let's do this. Let's see if I can make this here box. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me make this a different color. Let me make this, I'll make this blue. No, I'll make it green. Okay. And yeah, we make it green. So now what we do is we do this. We are going to literally take all these autonomous systems, okay, group them together like that, right? And what we're going to do is we are actually going to call this large grouping autonomous system 2022. Okay, so that is the confederation there. The confederation autonomous system 2022 consists of autonomous system 708, autonomous system 405, and autonomous system 904. Now, with confederations, you have within them, you have the two peerings that I just described. You have the eBGP and you have the IBGP, okay? Then you have a third connection, which they call, depending on the text that you're looking at, it could be the BGP design book, or it could be the CCIE infrastructure book. But that third connection is what they call intra eBGP. Okay. So that is nothing more than two autonomous systems that are paired together within the overall grand scheme of the Confederation itself. That's your third, okay, connection, BGP connection within that makes up the Confederation. So you have your IBGP, your eBGP, and your intra eBGP. Okay, so like I said, and what happens when you're bringing this together? You know, now this here picture is a real simple depiction, But what you want to think about is you're talking about a super large transient IBGP network, okay? Because where I have, let's say, these here 3 starships that represent 3 different routers, these individual autonomous systems could consist of hundreds of routers for each autonomous system. And like I said, that becomes super large when you want to break that down. You know, you got a 300 routers over here in autonomous system 708. You got 150 routers over here in autonomous 405. You may have, you know, 75 to another 200 routers up here in autonomous system 904. And like I said, you break this up into smaller autonomous systems, and then as a whole, you group them all together to make this one confederation. Now, with the Confederation, you still are subjected to the laws of IBGP, the laws of eBGP. Okay, so you still have to deal with your IBGP route advertisements. Okay, which you know the rules about IBGP as far as how advertisements are, how they work with internal peers. Okay, so you know you got to think about if you want to run an IBGP full mesh, where basically you're having everything within the internal BGP environment peered up with one another. Okay, with one or two starships that you see here, it's no problem to peer everything up with one another. But when you start getting huge, large amounts of routers, you're talking about a massive amount of connections. Okay, and then you're going to have an IBGP running within that BGP is that IBGP environment as well. So you know you can use your favorite IBGP, your interior gateway protocol, OSPF, RIP, eGRIP, you know, whatever you see fit. Okay, and like I said, those are some of the things that you can use to get over the slight nuances of BGP pairings. You also may hear about with the IBGP, you may also hear about redistributing your BGP routes into your into your interior gateway protocol to make sure that you have full network reachability within the actual autonomous system itself. Now, here's the thing. Letting your IBGP routes into your interior gateway protocol could present a problem in itself. As we know, BGP is massive, BGP is robust, so therefore it can handle hundreds of thousands of routes. Your interior gateway protocol, maybe not so much. So you can see where that problem can come into play at. Now also, you know, there's BGP synchronization that you can actually enable where a BGP speaker will not use a BGP route unless its interior gateway protocol is aware of that same route. Okay, that's where the whole redistributing BGP routes into the interior gateway protocols came into play at. You know, so it's like, in order for my protocols to be synchronized, I gotta let BGP's floodgates open into my my interior gateway protocol, so that if I had synchronization on, which is off by default, but if I had it on before a router takes an action, it's going to look and see that I want to use this here particular BGP route. It's going to confirm that the interior gateway protocol is aware of that same route. And if it is, then we can use it. Okay. That's what synchronization does. By default, BGP routers, BGP speakers do not have that function turned on. So that's one thing that you can do. It's not recommended, but it's there. Now you also learn later on in your BGP learnings, let's say at the MP level and even at the IE level, you start to use route reflectors. Okay, so let's talk about this real quick. Route reflectors, when you're looking at, and you heard me mention earlier, talking about IBGP rules. So what happens what that basically route reflectors solves the problem of is when we are looking at IBGP speakers. So let's just say we have an autonomous system out here that's in this here green circle. Okay. It receives a route. Or I should say it sends a route here to this here this here IBGP speaker right here. So it has two connections. It has a eBGP connection, okay, to this here green autonomous system out here. And it also has an IBGP connection down here to this device. Now, here's the thing. This first IBGP speaker, or this here Starship, learns about the routes outside from this here eBGP. And what it does, it forwards those routes down to this Starship. So this Starship knows about those routes because it just learned it from its IBGP neighbor. Now, here's the thing, and this is part of BGP's loop prevention mechanisms. This looks like the Starship Federation. Because it learned those routes from the outside autonomous system from its IBGP neighbor, it will not propagate those routes to the other IBGP speaker. So what that does in essence is it leaves it in the code. Okay. So this last IBGP speaker does not know anything about this outside world because its connected IBGP neighbor will not propagate those routes. So that's when I was talking about earlier about, one of the hurdles to get over that. One of those hurdles to get over is, you can do a full IBGP full mesh where you got the neighbors all connected to one another. Okay. But here's the thing. What route reflectors allows us to do is we can create route reflectors, which we can make this here Starship Federation look alike. We can make that into a route reflector. And in essence, what that will do is that will actually take the routes that it learned from its IBGP partner up here, and it will in turn forward that to its other internal brother or sister. Okay. So this router will in turn become a route reflector, okay, and push those routes that it learned from its other neighbor out to this client, okay? And what happens is that actually makes these here IBGP speakers what's known as a cluster. So you have a route reflector, you have a cluster, okay, which consists of the route reflector client as well as the route reflector client, which is this little guy at the end, and the route reflector server, okay. So that's where you can propagate, you know, these routes that were learned from the outside world into the other iBGP speakers, okay. So like I said, that's just a quick down and dirty, rough explanation of what BGP confederations are, and some of those inner workings of iBGP and eBGP, and you know how they're linked together and operate together. But so what I'm doing is I'm going to conclude this here, and look out for my part 2, where I'll actually go into the CLI, and you can see how this is put together, and you know, we can see a couple things in action, and do a couple verifications of a few things. So until then, take care.